Hello and welcome to the program Sula's Big Adventures with me, Sula. This episode is about how to pack for, prepare for, and see the Aurora Borealis. For many people, seeing the Northern Lights is a bucket list trip or a dream come true. I know it was for me. For years I wanted to see the Northern Lights, and I was finally able to see it this year. So let me tell you what's the best way to prepare for, pack for, and see the Northern Lights. The Northern Lights, or Aurora Borealis in the Northern Hemisphere and Aurora Australis in the Southern Hemisphere, is a naturally occurring beautiful display, and it's caused by the sun. The sun sends electrified particles toward the earth in the solar wind. These particles are deflected from the earth by the earth's magnetic field, but some of the particles are sent down the magnetic field at the north and south pole, where the particles interact with the earth's atmosphere. When the charged particles interact with oxygen, they create green and red displays. Red ones occur much higher in the atmosphere and are much rarer than green displays, which are the most common. When the electrified particles interact with nitrogen, it creates purple displays. Sometimes the sun has a massive solar storm where a bubble of gas pops and ejects particles at around 450 kilometers per second, and these are called coronal mass ejections, or CMEs. When the particles from a large CME collide with the Earth's magnetosphere, they can result in large auroral displays. The sun goes through a solar cycle of about 11 years, and during the solar maximum, there are a lot more sunspots, and these sunspots are associated with CMEs, or coronal mass ejections. We're currently in the middle of a solar maximum, expected to last for a few more years, so this is an ideal time to look for aurorae. But aurorae occur all the time, even during periods of solar minimum. But why not maximize your chances of seeing an aurora by going during a period of solar maximum? I'm recording this in 2024, and some scientists are predicting that this period of increased solar activity will extend into 2028. To see an aurora, you need to be near the North or South Pole, within about a 2,000-mile radius of the North Pole in the Northern Hemisphere. But you can't just go to the North Pole. There isn't any infrastructure there. So you need to find a town with some infrastructure, an airport or roads, in order to see the Aurora Borealis, somewhere like Fairbanks, Alaska, which is where I saw the aurora, or in Canada, in the Yukon or Northwest Territories, Yellowknife, Canada, or Whitehorse, or even Greenland or Iceland. And in Europe, you can go to Norway, Finland, Sweden, and even Scotland. You can see the aurora farther south than those places, but your chances are greatly diminished as there has to be a massive CME for the aurora to extend farther south than, say, about 55 degrees latitude. Some top spots to see aurorae are Fairbanks, Alaska, Yellowknife, Canada, Tromsø, Norway, Luosto, Finland, Jekasjara, Sweden, and Reykjavik, Iceland. Okay, so you need to find a town within 2,000 miles of the North Pole, but then you need to get away from the town, because to see the Northern Lights, you must get away from light pollution and city lights. Aurorae occur all the time, but in these far northern towns, during the summer, the sun never sets or barely sets, and so you can't see the aurora at that time of year. The best time to see the aurora is from about September through April, and the best times are around the autumnal and the vernal equinoxes. And before you go, check the phase of the moon for when you plan to be there. While a partial lunar phase is nice for lighting up your foreground if you're interested in photographing the aurora, you don't want to go when the moon is full, like I did, because the full moon will wash out a lot of the aurora light displays. So you found a town within the auroral oval, and you've checked the phase of the moon for when you want to go. And now you know you must go between September and April, and at these far northern latitudes it's going to be cold. So next, you have to properly dress. You must take this part very seriously because you don't want to get hypothermia or frostbite, but you also want to feel comfortable while waiting, and there's a lot of waiting, and watching. You can get very cold when just standing still in cold weather. So next, let me tell you how you need to dress for the aurora. You can rent gear if you don't want to buy it. If you go to Anchorage, Alaska, you can pick up some cheap, lightly used gear, I've heard, that people leave behind after their aurora trips. Or you can rent gear from rental shops like REI or other places. Or if you go on a tour, they'll rent you the appropriate gear. Let me tell you how you need to dress. You start with a base layer, expedition weight base layer, top and bottom. Next, you put on a thick wool sweater over your base layer, but since this is not very thick, I'm going to put this Polar Tech on top of the thick wool sweater. On top of my wool sweater, I'm going to wear this 600 downfill jacket. I ordered an 800 downfill jacket that was expedition weight from Fjallraven, but it was lost by the United States Postal Service. I share my time between the San Francisco Bay Area and Dark Skies, Montana. Here in the Bay Area, I don't need a big coat, but when I'm in Montana, it does get cold there. When I bought the house, people told me it gets to -40 below here. It hasn't yet, but it does get cold there. -28 Fahrenheit was the coldest I've ever experienced there. So I do have coats, but Fairbanks gets even colder. So I was concerned I was gonna die. So I decided I needed a thicker coat. So I did a little research, and this one came up very highly rated. In fact, I'm burning up. It's 800 or 900 filled down, and many of the reviews said it was the warmest coat out there, but that it was like wearing a sleeping bag, and I would have to agree with that. It's pretty voluminous, but very warm. But I ordered it, and it was supposed to come Tuesday before I left for Fairbanks, and it didn't come. A snafu with the post office until I was already in Fairbanks. But I decided to keep it and take it to Montana. But this is a very warm jacket. It's made by Fjallraven. Very expensive, but very warm. But you don't need anything like this. I just don't like being cold. But you do need a jacket that is very warm, and you have to wear a lot of layers. So let me explain that. So I'll have to wear this with a parka over the top of it. This is my parka. It's a little tight over the 600 downfill jacket, but it's gonna have to do. And next I'll show you what you do with your bottoms and your hands, which are the hardest thing to keep warm, and your head. Over my base layer bottoms, I'm gonna wear 800 downfill pants. Can't worry about how you look. It's all about staying warm. On top of my 800 downfill pants, I'm going to wear a pair of insulated snow pants. Now it's time for 2 pairs of socks and some very thick boots, 2 pairs of gloves, and 3 things for my head. For my feet, I have a pair of hiking socks, and over that, I'm going to put a pair of wool socks. And on top of that, a toe warmer. And on top of that, a pair of Sorels -40 rated boots. For my precious head, I have a baklava, and a neck gaiter, and an alpaca hat. And for my hands, oh, I have body warmers and hand warmers. Inside these big mittens are these liner gloves, even though the mittens are lined, because I'll have to take the mittens off to operate my camera. And liner gloves, and then these -40 rated gloves from Black Diamond. And then I'm all set, and oh my God, I'm so hot. And that's what all's in my suitcase. The only other thing is 2 tripods, my cameras, and my camera gear. They said it can get to -40 in Fairbanks. I didn't know they meant the whole week. It's going to be between -30 and -40. We better see that damn aurora. Now that you've found a great location, you checked the phase of the moon, you purchased or rented all the appropriate gear, next you need to know about the resources to check to predict when aurora is expected, so that you're not just standing out in the cold when there's no solar activity. Here are some resources that I've used, and most of these apps will even send you a notification on your phone when an aurora is expected. The ones I like are spaceweather.com and NOAA, NOAA. The University of Alaska Aurora Forecast is good if you're going to Alaska. And there's also softservenews.com, which I didn't use. And finally, if you'd like to photograph the aurora, you definitely need to take a tripod. You can take photos with your phone, but they'll never be as good as ones that you could get with a DSLR or mirrorless camera on a tripod. But you'll need to practice before you go with manual settings, manual focus, and other settings that you probably normally don't use with your camera unless you're an astrophotographer. You should take extra batteries because your batteries will die in the extreme cold weather. Also, if you leave your camera out in the cold for an extended period of time, it will start to freeze. Some people say to put your camera into a plastic bag and seal the bag so that the camera doesn't get fogged up. But I did not find this to be practical. Have you ever tried to seal a plastic bag with your gloved hand when it's -30 degrees Fahrenheit? It's not easy. It's very difficult, almost impossible. So instead, I recommend that you get a cheap camera dew warmer like this. The strap goes around the lens like this, and you'll also need an external battery pack to charge it. Also, you'll want to find a red headlamp to take. You can't have a white one. If you're going to be photographing the aurora, you'll want to have a scenic foreground for your photographs. So those are my tips and tricks for seeing an aurora. I had such a memorable trip to see the aurora that I'm definitely planning to go back on another aurora trip soon. And this time I'm going to follow my own advice. I'm going to check the lunar phases, I'm going to find a scenic foreground, and I'm going to take lots of chemical hand warmers to go inside my warm clothing. So that's it for now. I'll see y'all soon. Until then, get outside and enjoy the night sky. Dark skies forever. Sula, signing off.